Hello everyone and welcome to team building video of this week. A little after the weekend, but that's because it's not actually a team building video. Explain in just a minute. So I want to talk about this character. This character has been on JP for a little bit now. We've already seen some 140s start to show up in high-end arena, and we've seen some test videos. Peachin did a test video. You can go watch it if you want to see. And let me summarize the strong points of this unit. The strongest thing about this unit is the 50 turn limit. That's it. So yeah, this character, Luciel, is a brand new Thunder Elemental character that people have been starting to just, much like other really strong recent 100 cost characters, just put them in an entire party together and say, okay. Now, general findings from her on pure lightning teams is that she does generally make them stronger, but she doesn't improve them enough for me to consider them like the strongest mono elemental parties. I still think there's other stuff out there that is generally stronger, and it still loses to some stuff quite hard, which is just all in all better. Talking about Luciel also, her magic damage is just not good in basically any party composition that I have seen so far. I don't even think that she would be really that great if you threw her into an entire mage-based party, because that's not really what she wants to do. The biggest strength of this character is the 50 turn limit, because her general kit is geared more towards anti-physical damage, and given that most of the strongest characters out there are physical, well, she can just kind of potentially disable enemies and then kind of just sit it out because she has a high amount of healing, and most of the strongest DPSs that are being run are physical, and they've kind of overtuned her a little bit to be anti-physical. So Shawls has kind of brought a little bit more balance back, but here is the way that I see most matches play out. Two of the characters die on both teams, and for most of the things I've seen, it's Sephiroth versus Shawls. And as we previously covered, Sephiroth's DPS isn't incredibly high, and in an AI match, Sephiroth will have blown his limit burst quite fast, usually on the other two characters, which works negatively to what Shawls wants to do. But Shawls herself, if it comes down to Sephiroth and her, she wins because of the time limit. And I don't think that's particularly a great measure of what it is, but it is what it is. And that is to say that if Shawls is good at anything, it's essentially stalling out the end game until there's only her and one other character left. Now, from what I've seen, two characters against her doesn't necessarily guarantee victory at this point, because if she disables one of the characters, it's still essentially still 1v1, and that still ends up going badly for the other team. If there was no theoretical or if there was just no time limit, this character would be a loser 9 out of 10 times. So what I'm trying to generally say is that I personally don't like her for a couple of reasons. First reason is that, one, as opposed to Shawls, she's a 100 cost, which makes her way harder to justify into bringing into any limited time event, because most of the time, if you bring this character and one strong DPS and one very low tier cost character, that party will lose, because most of the time two characters will survive and be able to kill her. And Ashenmont is still very strong against this character, and Gilgamesh is incredibly strong against this character, because while she has a lot of anti-physical stuff in her kit, magic provides way more of a problem. That brings me to my second point. Once we start getting more mages, I mean, it could be that she will just fit into mage-based parties to go up against anti-physical, or just be an anti-physical team. But I actually think that she will probably suffer from that, because if mage teams become more popular, she's just generally not as good. So Shawls is this weird character. As a matter of fact, I would characterize her as being kind of one of the most, for mid-tier and low-tier players, I feel like this is a character you can pretty safely skip for the immediate part, just because when we were talking about her, she's a character that is really good for people who are highly competitive, who absolutely want to win. Because if you throw this character on a defense team, right now it's looking very, very positive for your side, as opposed to a defense team that doesn't have this character. Because again, stalling out 250 turns is a loss for the opponent, whether it's in arena or a few other places. And that's really good. I mean, for if you're like ultra super competitive. But I don't know how much Luciel will actually have a lifespan in this game. I mean, the fact that so many of our competitive events are limited and have some kind of criteria where cost is a major factor means that this girl's 100 cost probably isn't worth it most of the time. Even in defensive teams, I don't think it's necessarily worth it. The only place that I think this character really truly excels is just regular time, when there's no cost limit and you can go to the moon and do whatever you want kind of thing. But I think also that we're probably going to be due for more mages in the near future, given that Ramada as well as Moore seem to have new versions of themselves. Those story-based characters will almost certainly be working their way into the game relatively quickly, and given the amount of power gap that we've seen between new and old units, I would say that they will be incredibly strong and probably be really massive pushbacks against what we've already seen. Not necessarily completely eliminating them or making them superfluous, but probably really making people readjust what they actually think is good and spreading the meta out over a lot more different team composites, which is a good thing. But to me, Luciel exists in this really weird place right now where I look at this character and I totally see her value. I totally see her as being good, but I also can see really easy ways to counter her. For one way, disable prevention of any kind basically will screw this character incredibly hard, because anytime where two characters survive and you have just enough DPS to get there, you'll kill this character every single time. And disable is one of the few ways she has of doing it. Healing down also on your opponent, which could very much be a thing. I mean, sure, it's a thing on Sephiroth, but having a mage come in the future who could very easily counter this unit, just Earth Elemental Mage to pair up with Ashen Mont, would completely kill this character in terms of her usefulness. So she exists in this really weird state of being very good, but I feel like her shelf life is probably the shortest of most of the characters. I just don't see her being a thing that you ever want to put in a limited team, because I don't think her magic DPS ever gets there enough. Her AI is pretty good, but I just don't think her magic DPS will get there enough. Even if you partnered her with Gilgamesh on the team and threw in a lesser cost unit, I still don't think that there's enough there to really, really recommend this. But all of that is a little bit superfluous to just talking about the fact that she is also permanent. You don't have to worry about getting her right away. She'll be forever in the pool. And yeah, I mean, I think I've spoken my piece. I mean, I do think that this unit is a strong unit. She very clearly is a strong unit and can be absolutely kind of just one of those that you want to throw your phone away just because you lost because of the time limit. And if your character, if the AI was half as good on some offensive characters who could just realize, hey, to win this fight, I need more AP. I'm going to generate AP for a few turns, let this character essentially do nothing, and then go and attack her would be quite a bit different. But reduction of healing power is very, very strong against her, and disable resistance is also very, very strong against her. And right now, that seems to be the only thing that's incredibly carrying her, as a lot of the matches end in basically her versus one DPS. And if that's not the scenario, the chances of success for her in a party is much lower. But yeah. So one other thing I just want to talk about really quickly, showing the data on Wotv Calc, which is finally up. 100 cost, 3 move, 1 jump. Accessory or TMR, human resistance of 10%, critical evasion of 25, and magic of 40. Still like this Trust Mastery a lot. I think it will be incredibly valuable, especially when a great mage team comes along, because it sure is a lot of just really, really good stuff. Dream ability, skill activation time down, and single target resistance, again, contributing to making her more difficult to kill. Taking a look at her kit, the chance to counter is a 30% chance, decreasing chance of being targeted by 3, regen of 10% for 3 turns, again, helps her survive a fair bit more. But yeah, looking at her main job, there isn't too much that I really have been overly impressed about. Disable is definitely a thing that drives her a lot. And just, yeah, she's incredibly a big thing for anti-physical. But I feel like if just one more mage comes along that pairs even remotely well with Gilgamesh, it'll be an entirely different thing. And Ice Howlet is getting his Limit Burst upgrade next week, which his Limit Burst was insane and still is insanely powerful. So if it just gets a little bit more, him and Gilgamesh could be just really nasty, especially with Old Doa in there too, to potentially protect, as Old Doa, Gilgamesh, and I think it's A2 is considered to be one of the strongest party confirmations, at least definitely one of the strongest single element things. Element parties out there. So yeah, taking a look at the data, I mean, you can take a look here and see if there's anything, but yeah, disable, general healing power are her strongest skills by far. I don't even think the auto revive is really that good, because 9 times out of 10, Sephiroth, a secondary hit ability will just hit and remove it anyway, so even her long distance healing just doesn't really seem that good. So I don't know. This has been my general findings of it. Definitely is looking strong for now, but I do feel like the shelf life on this whole combo feels incredibly short, given that it seems like we have a decent number of mages coming up, and who knows, every character recently and another strong drop in the pool. And as I talked about earlier in another video, you know, when that first two characters being Jum and Mont came out, it was such a big power gap that there was a ton of opportunity to raise that character to max and use them incredibly quickly. But as we are starting to level out the playing field more, as it's getting more and more messy in terms of what is actually the best, units like this are less and less and less important to get right away, and definitely can take more of a sitting back and waiting stance, which is definitely what I have adopted. I'm not particularly fussed about this character, because some people say means that she's the best character in the entire game, but that's not my opinion. So, and maybe some others. Anyway, so we'll have to wait and see what happens with her, as well as some other stuff. But anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you found it informative. If you're looking for ways to counter this character when she comes, it's, I think, pretty straightforward. Some of the stuff that will just really ultimately wreck her. And I think that it's going to be maybe a couple units before she really starts to feel the squeeze already. And it's probably just better to run something else than a healer support unit, which has been the general case in Wotv. If you look at it historically, not many people run Ayaka or any healer, except for Shawls, but again, low cost. And if there she came in. Anyway, See you later.